you just press start when you're ready.
Okay, let's start. Now it is.
Oh, good. So today we have something completely different. Well, enough of heavy, scary war things, but somehow you still have bits of darkness wherever you go. Maybe it's supposed to be so. Okay, so even though this is a different kind of poetry and quite witty, still we have to go to the dark side. I don't know why, but it's good. So today we have Robert Browning and the poem which is a monologue rather than a poem in a lyrical sense. So he has a few of the kind. So this one is impressive, and it's a bit shorter than the other ones. So we'll have a look at it today. My Last Duchess. So let's read it. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands work busily a day, and there she stands. Will please you sit and look at her? I said, Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that picture countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turn, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but I. And seem as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half blush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She lacked the terror she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. So it was all one. My favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, bough of cherries some officials full, broken the orchard for her, the white mule she rode around the terrace, all and each would draw her from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked man, good, but thanked somehow, I don't know how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this or that and you disgusts me. He means or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse, in there would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Also she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, and all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the county of Astor's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed. Though his fair daughter's self, as I vowed at starting, is my object, and I will go together down, sir. Not a snap though. Dame the seahorse for the rarity, which claws of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
As you said, there are longer poems. I think Scott is not
Yes, so we'll
longer
probably
than that
won't
because
look at each and every word of
it's-
this, otherwise we'll be sitting here till morning.
yeah, because it's a bit overwhelming, of course, which is probably one of the purposes why it was written, to sort of drown the reader in all of these.
In the ocean of speech.
In the
In the
ocean
stream.
stage, in a stream, which is also a very elegant stream. Impression number 2, somehow the rhythm I used wasn't the rhythm you used, and throughout the entire poem, which is quite long, we never were same pace, which is also interesting. I don't know, but the rhythm might reflect somebody's perception of the poem, which probably means that the perception you formed is far away from the perception I was trying to form and reflect with my voice.
Okay, anything obvious and straightforward that we can notice as we read it just for first time? Apart from the rhythm.
Well, it depends on what you call obvious.
Anything that comes straight to your head or heart as you read it, as you look at it. There's something very unusual or very usual, something that you notice straight away.
Well, as I said, the thing we usually look at as we approach the poem for the first time is probably the heading, and the heading is unusual, sort of, because it somehow assumes we know two things. It doesn't say the Duchess, for example, or a Duchess. What it says is my last Duchess. So it is assumed by the writer, by the poet, that we are aware of who this I is, to whom the Duchess belongs, at least in the heading. And it is also assumed that there were others before this last one. Because if it is the last Duchess, then it's not the first Duchess. Obviously, there are others. And as you think of a common word that relates with my last day, my latest experience, something like that, it's not. I'm just thinking whether I can read it or not, because it might. Okay, the idea is, I was saying something. The idea is that you sort of bring together the words that do not signify anything immediately to the reader. So the heading is unusual. The structure itself I wouldn't comment upon, but of course it's also obvious that it's quite long, and at least in the thing that I'm looking at now, it's only divided into lines. It's not officially sort of divided into stanzas.
And it wouldn't.
And it wouldn't, yeah. So again, we usually assume that a stanza means a complete idea, or at least a complete part of an idea. Also, we usually assume that it's much easier to navigate through a poem when you have these smaller bits, just as we assume it's easier to navigate a prose text when it's divided into paragraphs. Nothing of that sort. Again, as you say, it is done on purpose. It is also true that many 19th century writers and probably poets were accustomed to writing longer paragraphs than we are today.
Well, I guess there's a completely different reason.
Yeah, but it's of course a completely different reason. It's just...
Because if you write a poem, you might as well decide to divide it into bits, or you may decide to write a whole long bit. Because if you look at his other poems, they would be in one piece and much, much longer. But that's a monologue. It's a person speaking. And in that sense, it's one complete piece, because you don't break your speech. Your speech flows naturally. It flows on and on and on.
Maybe, because it's true for the person who is producing a monologue, but it isn't necessarily true for many of us, because many of us really struggle with saying something and we can't really go on and on and on without stop.
So that says something about the narrator.
Yeah. And of course, the other technical thing I've noticed was the kind of style he uses in terms of the choice of words, the elegance, which is obviously evident in the poem, and also he likes all the words. He likes all the verb forms, for example. And again, that's probably not unusual for a poet, especially a poet who is not writing in the beginning of the 21st century, but who is writing sometime in the 19th century. But the entire picture, to talk about pictures, is much more complex as a result of that, and there is something very elegant about it. There is also something heavier about it. So when I'm talking about Browning's style in this poem, I can't say that it's elegant and light. It can be elegant and light in some parts of it, it can be much more elaborate in other parts. And again, probably this changes in rhythm and changes in wording are also marking the bits of his.
Yeah.
The bits of his. No, it's just eye contact makes me.
Okay, I'll just look at the poem. I won't look at you.
No, it's just. You have an amazed look, and I was. If I didn't receive this directly from you, I would have assumed that we are discussing two different pieces of text altogether. You have something, and I have something else, and you're amazed that I'm talking about something that is not really even.
That would be a very interesting experiment to have two different poems, and you never know what poem the other person has when you discuss it.
You never know if he even got a poem to discuss.
Yeah, you can just bluff a bit. Okay, so yes and yes. But what is the most amazing about this poem is, like we said in the beginning, it's a monologue. Yeah? Which means the narrator has 100% monopoly on the poem. We know there are at least two people in the poem here, the man and his guest. And the other person doesn't have a say at all. Yeah, the Duke well, so since that's Duchess or he's a Duke, talks to that man, but the man has no words to say. Even there are some questions that the person has, but he can't even ask them. And like here, I know, I said for a panel by design for never read strangers like you, the picture countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, and they would ask me if they durst. So the person doesn't ask, the Duke says it for him.
Or maybe he's very much capable of reading other people's minds.
Yes,
and
maybe,
he responds
but still,
to some small hints.
Yeah, maybe, but still, he has the air of authority. He doesn't let you any space, doesn't give you any space. Yeah, you just want to say something, and he just stops you. Oh, okay, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, so how does it feel? And you try to say something, and the other person just, no, I know what you're going to say. Just shut up and listen to me. How do you feel about it?
Well, we don't usually like it very much, unless of course we have nothing to say, and then it's nice to let the other fellow talk and talk and talk.
Yeah, but here it's not just talk and talk. Here it's quite important. So what is happening here? What is the plot?
Well, notice there's a picture that our narrator, who probably happens to be the Duke of something, shows to his guest or guests, and this happens to be the picture of the Duchess, which, as we might assume, was his wife. And what the narrator, the Duke, does is he points to the picture and he produces a cloak that is connected to the lady in the picture and to all the small details that he knows about the picture, about
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what is happening? Why is the other person there? That's one person, or he calls him Sir, so we know it's one person. Why is the other person there? Who is the other person? What is happening there?
What is happening there?
Well, it's quite plain here.
It's quite plain, okay.
Have you not just read it?
Have we?
So the ending, I repeat, they count your masters. So that man comes from the count. The count is that man's master. And what are they discussing? What's the business?
Buying and selling something.
The dowry, his fair daughter's self is my object. He wants to marry. He wants to marry the count's daughter and get some money as dowry.
Okay.
That's what he wants to do. He says, my last Duchess, that's my last Duchess, she is not here anymore. But you know why we are here. I want to marry your master count's daughter. And I might mention some money, but no, it's not the money that I want the woman. And that's why they are there. But they only say it in the end. So apparently there's a kind of a big party. Yeah, we'll go together down, so the company below will meet them. They came up to some private quarters, private rooms, where the Duke shows him a painting, which is also a hidden painting. It's first of all, it's in his private part of the house, upstairs. Secondly, it's behind the curtain. None puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. Yeah, so it's special, it's private, and for some reason he decides to show the painting and to talk about it. So if you look at it, it's really amusing, that kind of poetry, because what we have is just one point of view. Yeah, we only know what the narrator tells us. We have no idea if it's true, if it's not true, if that's how he sees it. Yeah, we don't have any other opinion in it. So we are looking at the world only through the eyes of the narrator. We don't have anything objective. Everything in here is subjective. And this is the other way around. Yeah. So the only conclusion we can make, kind of conclusion, because again, you never know, some sort of conclusion only about the narrator himself. We can make no conclusions about the Duchess, the guest, the Count, anyone else, only the narrator. So, which again gives us a lot of space to read. So some people, well, let's say the feministic kind, they really like it because they say, oh, that's about women being repressed. It's about the Duchess who was free and clever and happy, and he just killed her because she was too clever for him and too happy. But you don't know, it's their fantasy. You may as well say, well, she was really stupid, she was just an Instagram girl who just smiled at everything like a fool. Yeah, who was stubborn and had no brains at all. Could also be true. We have no idea. So people who say it's about repression, that's their way of reading. We have nothing to confirm it, or nothing to deny it, which is really important if you come to think about it, because that's how we look at reality in general. Yeah, we see a picture, and when we build it, then we build it to our expectations. My expectation is that someone closes the door. That is my expectation. Because if someone does not close the door, it will be really cold in here. Well, you know, the man and mice, and the best laid plans going over it. Hello. How's it going?
Well, 8 more minutes.
8.
7.
7. Oh,
No.
how time flies. 7.
Yes. Not only time flies.
Alright. So, again, we see our own image of reality and we have no idea just how accurate it is. It's 100% accurate for us, obviously, because that's how we see it. But relatively speaking, we have no idea. Oh. Okay.
Здравствуйте.
Everyone touches.
Я подъехал.
Right, so the very important question is, why would he talk about his love
Я уже
Dutch
смотрю детали.
to that man?
15.
So what is his situation? He wants to marry A beautiful girl. Maybe she's not beautiful, we don't know. Again, he says, oh, he's fair, daughter, but he won't say, I want to marry that ugly woman. He wouldn't say it anyway. So we have no idea. Maybe she is fair, maybe she's not fair.
Здрасте.
Hello. That's
Прямо.
А эти тоже наши?
Да, это лес Сезар.
Спасибо.
Maybe there's a wedding, and instead of a cake they have some pizza. A wedding pizza.
You never know.
You never know.
Salty these days.
Alright. And again, what are his reasons for marrying that girl? Because on one hand he mentions the dowry. He says, your master is so generous. We both know that if I ask for some reasonable dowry, he will not say no. He won't disagree to it. But no, it's not the money that I want, it's the woman. So is it really the girl that he wants, or is it the money that he marries? Is that what he does? He marries women, gets their money and kills them for some reason?
Oh yeah, of course.
Couldn't be.
Of course he does.
But anyway, why would he mention the story of his last Duchess? Because if you want to marry someone, are you supposed to say, I killed my previous partner because she was too happy? Is that what you're supposed to say?
He's just providing himself an alibi.
No. In what way?
No, I'm just kidding. It's interesting, of course. I don't know whether you would feel offended if you were somebody's bride and your bridegroom would speak about his previous wife.
Yes, he doesn't speak to the bride,
But he speaks to someone who,
to the messenger.
To the messenger, yeah. So, again, maybe it's just something some people are accustomed to. They enter a room, they see the picture, they know the picture very well, and yet there is something in the picture that sparks an immediate response, and they
But
want
let us
to...
not forget that he brought that man there
on
by
purpose.
design.
Okay.
They didn't just came there by an accident. Yeah, like we said, at first it's private part of the house. Second, the painting was behind the curtain. Oh, maybe we should restart the camera.
I wonder what that scent does here, because there's no pizza, but the scent is still here. It's like the Cheshire Cat smile. The cat's invisible, but the smile is still remains.
At least it's not like the Nasruddin story, when someone smells food and the cook comes to him and says, oh, pay for it. Why? Because you ate your bread, your plain bread, but you could smell my food, so you should pay for it. Because when you were eating your food, you imagined you were eating my good food, so you should pay for it. And the man was like, no, I have no money. Why would I pay you? That's stupid. And no, go and pay. And then Nasruddin just came to him and said, okay, I know the answer. Okay, listen. That was the sound of money in my purse. Did you hear it? Well, yes. Okay, you got paid. You get the sound of money for the smell of food. Do they close the door? Do they ever close the door? Oh, sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Oh,
So,
okay.
thanks God, it was before the plastic banknote times. Now, trying
Well,
to.
maybe you can look at it.
Yeah, maybe it's just.
You look at my car.
Yeah, that's
Okay, but anyway, when most people focus on the fact that a monologue only reflects.
Let me check on this because I somehow am a doubt. Maybe I was. No, I wasn't. I was distracted, rightly so, but I wasn't. Distracted so much. Just forget everything about pressing the right buttons.
Okay, so while most people, when reading these, focus on the fact that it only reflects one part and who was the Duchess and was he a tyrant, things like that. My question is, why talk about it at all? If you think about it, does it make sense?
And of course he knows that he's going to have a long monologue because he invites his visitor to sit and have a look and enjoy the penetrating analysis.
So all that he does is by design. He brings the man there by design, he shows them the painting by design, he talks about it by design too. What is his design?
So maybe his design is to show a beautiful woman. She seems to be beautiful from what he says. To show a woman who's smiling, so it's reasonable to assume that she's a happy woman in the portrait. And well, who makes a woman happy? Of course it's her husband, no one else.
And then he goes to say, basically, I killed her.
That's it.
This grew, I gave commands, and all smiles stopped together. That's just as if he lied. So he did something which resulted in her death. Maybe he killed her, maybe he was so strict that she got, I don't know, depressed and sick and died. We don't know. We don't know what happened. But for some reason he mentions it more or less openly. So why would you say that you killed your previous wife to someone or in discussing the wedding?
Yes,
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe he is really clever and there's some deep plan in it. Maybe he means to show that he's a strong man who will not bear with any freedom.
Нет. Давай руку. Вы это не туда ставили.
Я тоже поставил туда же, куда и
Well, this lady was also happy before she married.
Yeah. So really, if you don't mind the word really, because what is real, I believe that the last lines are the key to the whole poem. Because again, people say like, oh, he's showing off. He mentions the name of the painter, Fra Pandolf. And he doesn't say, oh, my Duchess was a beautiful woman, look at her, but he says, Fra Pandolf, Pandolf, was a great artist and he made it for me, so I'm very rich, I can allow it. And then he thinks more about the masterpiece than of the person. The painting is only important to him.
No, you also felt it. Is it? Okay.
Let's pause.
Okay.
Let's get in routine.
So the
Flora
idea
is
is,
the
yeah,
best kind of tea
it gives you a life where she wasn't really so he didn't have a chance to drink tea and the continue to eat that.
Oh, we talk about Italy. Frappando. Alright. So, as I was saying, before we got interrupted. Oh, is someone still there? I believe that the answer, the key to, that's what you do in a British house. You keep yourself warm with a bit of a blanket or a sweater or something. Well, that's to feel very aristocratic, because you have a big house and not a very big chimney and no central heating, that's for sure.
Everything is decentralized.
Right. Okay, right. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, for the rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. When people read it and talk about it, usually, again, they don't pay much attention to the last line, or they just go to say, so he just mentions killing his Duchess, and it's not important, it's something like discussing a piece of art, discussing this painting, discussing Neptune, and again he starts with talking about art, and not just art, but expensive art, yeah, showing off, and he ends up with the same. Yeah, just this and that, okay, it's not important. But I believe that it is important. Neptune taming a seahorse for the rarity which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Why do you think it might be important? How is it related to the point?
Well, taming, of course, is easily connected to a happy young lady who was all smiles before she became part of the Duke's household, and instead of allowing her to enjoy full freedom of smiling, being happy, playing, he sort of brings her to a very strict discipline, and that sort of tames her by also killing her.
Yeah. So again, we don't know. We only know what he tells us. What he tells us is that at first it was okay. She just smiled like a stupid little blonde girl. But then it grew. He says. Yeah. So maybe she was frivolous. We don't know. Maybe it was just innocent. Maybe she was just happy. Maybe she was really allowing a bit too much.
Or maybe she was just, maybe she was allowing herself to do too much because it's probably safe to assume that the husband back at that time is much older, or at least somewhat older than the woman, and you probably find it difficult to enjoy your husband's company, and instead you find someone else to smile at, to your husband's offense.
Yeah, so we have no idea what really happened. We don't know if she's guilty or if it's just his imagination. Is he being too strict?
And when you say guilty means you risk not closing the door and risk being killed, or either not closing the door or smiling too much as a young lady, an attractive lady. Yeah.
You have 1,000 bonuses to put on.
maybe we should serve some good tea to everyone who remembers closing the door. Just,
Modernity. Okay, right.
yeah.
So you're saying-
So I was saying that this is again speaking as women's rights activists. You might say that it was just because she was free and happy, and her husband wasn't happy as long as she was happy. So his happiness was only bought at the price of making his Duchess unhappy, and of course that also explains. This is my picture. This is my Duchess. This is my. This, all of this is mine, and it begins with the heading is my. It begins with that's my last Duchess, and it ends with the word. This is something that was cast in bronze for me.
Yeah.
Again, me.
Do we know the name of the Duchess?
No, it never gets mentioned.
Yeah, so we know the names of the painter, we know the name of the sculptor.
Yeah,
Well, that's more important to him.
yeah, that's more important. And of course, she's only the Duchess, or she was only Duchess as long as she was married to him. So this is the title that got transferred her because of.
And we know
Her
it's not
happy
the
choice.
other way around. It's not like he married her and got the title because he says my gift of a 900 years old name.
Yeah.
So a Neptune taming a seahorse. So a seahorse is what?
Well, a seahorse is a little.
No, a seahorse.
A seahorse is a little bit of enormous. How do you call it?
Okay.
The one
Butterfly.
the one that often appears in circuses.
Okay, so a seahorse is, first of all, it's an animal.
Is it?
Oh, really, is it? Seahorse, meaning it's natural. It's a natural force. And if you look at seahorses in culture, because we have them in Greek culture with Neptune, we have it in like Celtic culture. Well, there's no such thing as Celts, of course, but let's say the Scottish, Irish things. When you have seahorses, you know they're wild, they're aggressive, they're not nice. They are really, really wild. They try to kill people, so they're so wild.
What do they do with the people? Who
They eat
kill?
them.
Oh.
They eat them. They eat
So
people.
that means pizza time for them. Okay.
So a seahorse is wild nature, a wild force of nature, let us say. Yeah. Again, if we talk about seahorse, it's something tonic, something before the anthropomorphic guys. Yeah, something really, really ancient, before the time of time. And that's the Duchess, the seahorse. Yeah, she was doing what she wanted to do, and she was, again, a seahorse has no reason, has no plan. Yeah, it's just a force of nature. And then we have Neptune, who is a man, okay, a god who looks like a man. Yeah, so again, that's another level of order. He has a shape. A seahorse doesn't really have a shape.
Poor little thing.
It comes, it goes, it can appear, disappear, it can turn into foam, it can come out of foam, because it's wild. And he comes, and Neptune is the king, Neptune is order, Neptune is a man. as opposed to the seahorse representing the wild feminine side. So what we have apparently is not just the narrator and the Duchess. Okay, we have no idea what really happened there. We don't know, so we can't really discuss it. But we have order and chaos. And the man represents order. And from his perspective, anything that is not 100% order is chaos and should be eliminated. Yeah, so he can't see any reason in what she does. Yeah, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She like potential looked on and her looks went everywhere. So he's a practical person. He doesn't understand it. Yeah, he says, how can it be? My favor at her breast, some jewelry he gave her, which is expensive, which is cool, which is fashionable, and the dropping of the daylight in the west. What? Just a nice landscape? How can you compare this amazing brush and what? A bit of landscape? What? About cherry, some officials Fallbrook in the orchard for her, the white mule. So anything, how can she enjoy all of that? What's the reason? And he being order, he can't reason the reason because there's no reason that he can see. And there is no reason. So what happens here is more of two paradigms colliding. So again, and one has to destroy the other because they cannot coexist in one universe, in one space. They deny one another. So an alternative version of it is
complementing each other.
Complementing, could be. But not when it's so fixed. They are two very rigid frames. She is too light and he is too orderly. An alternative is what you see in the animated film we discussed, The Beauty and the Beast, where the Beast is all grumpy and then the girl comes to him and she says, la la la, butterflies, butterflies, and he's like, oh yeah, butterflies, butterflies. But that is not very realistic. Or, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even if you told her, okay, I don't like this, I don't like that, still, that would be some stooping. And I choose never to stoop. So he talks about being perfect, ideal, yeah, the highest form of order. So what she does, from his point of view, is foolery. And to think about it, to talk about it, is below him. To talk about foolery is to become a fool. To touch it is to get it. So he says, no, I'm not going to do it. I never did.
If you are so rational about these things, if you have this all in a mind that is, can you say, analytical mind, I don't know if you can say that's of this nice little guy. But if that's the case, then why on earth do you marry at all?
Yeah, good question. Why? Maybe he thought he could check her and keep her in order. Maybe he didn't think or didn't know that she would be so free. Maybe.
So I mean, he seems to be very much enjoying his own company, which is also the company of beautiful paintings and sculptures and a very expensive house and so on and so forth.
So
he
maybe
doesn't miss
of
this large
furniture.
element because, yeah, so he only needs another piece of furniture. He doesn't really, because now she's fixed on the wall as something that is captured and
Yes.
pinned on, and the seahorse is stained by Neptune and cast in bronze again.
Yeah, fix it.
Fixed and motionless.
Yeah, it's a very good point that a painting of the Duchess is better than the real Duchess. Because the painting is orderly. It doesn't do anything stupid. In fact, it doesn't do anything. It is as it is. You can control it.
Yeah, and you can even invite other men to look at it, which would be unlikely if it were a lady who's alive, who has her own smiles, who can respond to it. So it's like something that. So isn't it like, as you said, or maybe as someone else reflecting the poem also said, the idea that everything has sort of. He's possessed by the idea of possessing
Yeah,
things.
Because
And
again, the Duchess didn't really care about what he thought. Like, I don't like you smiling at sunset. I don't like you smiling at that official's fall. Yeah, so.
But again, again it's like we don't know if she's a stupid girl or a smart woman. We are sort of met with a man who seems to be quite well, smart at least, who doesn't look very silly with all that analysis happening. So I wanted to ask the question. I forgot what the question was. Maybe it's just you usually, if you have what they call domestic violence these days, you normally imagine a man beating a woman. That wasn't. It's highly unlikely, I think, in this aesthetic atmosphere of the poem that it was really the case. So
No, he says, I gave commands.
Yeah, he gave
He
commands.
doesn't do anything. He gives commands. And what are the commands? The smiles of all together.
Yeah.
So if it was a sci-fi film or book, then you might imagine how he turns a living woman into a painting. And it's not a painting of the woman, but the woman herself transformed into a lifeless painting, which suits him better than a real woman. You may imagine that.
Yeah. So it seems that all our sympathies, at least if our sympathies are not on the lady's side, although they might be, because she's such a lively person. Also it seems, because we never meet her. We are very much we feel lots of antipathy towards the Duke. And that seems to unite, as you say, the feminist analysts of the poem, as well as the rest of us. So it seems that there's no sympathy we can accept to the Duke.
It really depends on where you are, because you might agree with the Duke if you're on the same mindset. Because again, it really depends on how you see things. So, like the relational man and nature, which used to be more like a competition till very recently. Who is stronger, the man or the nature? You go out into nature, you get killed. because it's dangerous, or you go into nature and you change it, you conquer it.
Yeah.
So again,
And then
the way
there's
he
a sort
thinks
of,
is-
sort of response, because many people say, okay, you think you've conquered nature, now nature is
but that's what we have today.
revenging you. But is it also the model we see here, where you sort of tame something which is natural, lively, unpredictable, and you think you come as a winner, and then this sort of thing comes after you. And,
Well, it doesn't come after him here.
That's what I'm
In
saying.
fact, he can talk about it.
He can talk
freely.
about it freely, and it seems that if he really either killed the woman by, I don't know what, giving her some nice Italian poison, pizza time again.
Okay, let's
Or-
I think it's fine. You think we have a minute or two?
Well, it has 9 minutes.
Oh, okay, then let's just finish this bit.
Yeah. So I mean, there's what's the word? Repentance. There's nothing of that sort in the poem, unless, of course, you count our discussion today, the discussions many feminists had before, as a sort of their way of saying, keep away from
Because
us.
many would say, serves her right. Many would say, oh no, he's an awful person, she was just a happy woman and he killed her. And many would say, serves her right. So again, it's kind of about taking sides. When you read the poem, you may read it impersonally, or most people, when reading it, would take a position, agree or disagree. Although it's really weird, because when you think about it, there's nothing to agree or disagree, because you are within a single system. So who is a woman? If she let herself be lessoned, so not plainly set her wits to use, for suit and make excuse. So again, you can read it differently. If she let herself be lessoned, so if she listened, but she didn't listen, she just set her wits to yours. What does it mean? Does it mean that she was clever and she argued back? Or was she just stubborn? Or what? So we have no idea, absolutely no idea about her. But we have some ideas about the situation and about the man. So why do we look at it from the man's perspective? Because we have two sides at least here, the Duke and the Duchess. It could be written from the Duchess's point of view, and she would have her own ideas about it. We don't see it, so why did Browning decide to write it from the Duke's point of view?
Well, apart from the obvious fact that it's probably easier for a man to write something from a male point of view, which is probably not true at all, we might say that it creates a much stronger impression if it's written from the Duke's point of view, simply because you write it from the Duchess' point of view, and then you have this clear picture. Oh, I was such a happy person before I married him, and now I'm so miserable.
Okay, it would be subjective. It would not be objective.
What we have here?
We don't know. Again, it could be exactly the same. She may say, "Oh, I did nothing. I just smiled innocently." But would it be true? Did she really smile innocently? Yeah, we would have no idea.
Yeah, but then of course, if she said, "I did nothing but smile innocently," she would sort of try to defend herself. And here, it's, as you say, objective in the way that he more or less what Browning does is he does not say, oh, what a terrible man, what a beautiful woman. He doesn't say, what a stupid woman, what a analytical mind. Something like he lives it as it is, giving us a chance to form our own opinions, to have our own guesses, and that sort of makes the sphere much wider than the sphere as if it were painted from a victim's point of view.
If she's a victim.
If she is a victim. So here we don't know. If we start doing that from her point of view, then she would probably, again, what would she have to say about him?
So we have no idea because we know nothing about her, apart from what the man says.
Okay.
So maybe she would say, oh, my husband was such a stupid and boring old man, and I enjoyed just trifling around. I never respected him or something like that. We have no idea. Or maybe she would say, oh, I loved him, but why would it stop me from enjoying life in general? But from how we read it, from the impression we have from this bit, as she represents life, because we have smile and joy and things like that connected to her. Yeah. So what she does is she represents life, life force, and he represents order.
Okay.
Because somehow order is incompatible with life. Because life is always unpredictable.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. It's you sort of have
And
a paradigm
wants
or a
it to be
pattern.
predictable and
Yeah.
controllable.
Yeah, and he seems to be the man who always wants to be in control of things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get some more tea. Let's get some more tea. Tea horses. Right. And when you read it the second time or more, you start noticing little hints. Straight from the beginning. That's why last time was painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. And he repeats it in the end, as if she were alive. So that's how we started, with the hint that she is dead, but she's there, as if she were alive. Then you have now puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but so again, I tell you my secrets, and you only have it from my perspective. You only see it from my perspective. Which is literally what happens in this poem. And the curtain I have drawn for you is, on one hand, is the curtain behind which the picture is. At the same time, the curtain of the secret. And I still don't know why he would show it to someone. I have no idea. But that's what he does. If they durst, if they dare, again showing his authority, paint must never hope to reproduce the faint how flushed dies along her throat. Again, when we read it for the first time, we may not pay much attention to it, but when we know what happens, again he speaks quite openly. Her half flush dies along her throat. That is exactly what the husband wants. Then, my favor at her breast, maybe in the sense that he wants to pin her heart. with a brush, but it doesn't work because the dropping of the daylight in the west, which again, not in the east, in the west, another hint of death. The bowl of cherries that someone breaks. Again, a bowl of cherries, and we have the flowers, which are now here. The next day they're gone all together. So again, that's like this lady, maybe something very gentle, something beautiful, but something that comes and goes, and now it's broken. The white milk, dry return. Then of course he says, "Oh, if you had skill in speech, which I have not, do we think it's true?"
No, we don't.
So, that's what he says, like, "Oh, if I favored, but I'm just a simple person. If I told her this or that and you disgusts me." Again, is that what a loving husband tells the wife if he doesn't like something about her? It's disgusting how you walk. So maybe that's where his feelings, he has feelings, his logical and practical, he has feelings. That's really weird, because if you have order to the highest degree, then you have no feelings, because feelings are irrational. Yeah, but here he has feelings, so it disgusts me. He lets it out here. And he tries to pretend being indifferent, but it comes out here and there a little bit. So he is still human. He wants to be more like a machine, just 100% efficiency and control and command. But he still has human feelings, like disgust. He says, "I choose never to stoop," but he stoops by mentioning the disgust. Yeah, this Druid commands when all smiles stop together. And then, what is interesting, so we have the situation of wooing, we have a new bride, so that continues. So he is like a big fat old spider in his web, wedding web. And the wives, the girls, the brides are like flies coming and caught in his web. So he got rid, or controlled, let's say, got under his control one Duchess. Now he is up to the next one. Maybe it's his hobby. Maybe it's his hobby to tame seahorses. So he says, "His fair daughter's self is my object."
But if that's the case, then we have a good example, which was very popular at that time. Don Juan Casanova, something like that. And our guy here seems to be quite different from both of them.
So he seems to collect women like he collects pieces of art, and he is bent on making them perfect in the way he sees it. And a perfect woman is a dead woman, he seems to think.
So if you look at this as a poem, you can say some of the things we said about the poem today. Do you think it's fair to look at it as a sort of a feminist manifesto because of the tragic fate that's meant and
Well, like I said, it would be taking sides. We can't because we don't know what is going on, for one thing. For another thing, why would we want to take sides? The poet intentionally takes sides by presenting only one side of reality. And how we react to it is our own business. Well, again, that is interesting. Do we want to argue? Do we get angry or do we agree? And why? Because that's a game. The poem is a game. Because that happens with like media, with the news, when you're presented with one side of things. And unless you do your research and look at the other side, what the other side has to say, your opinion will be based on this one-sided point of view, which is what we have here. So if a feministic person reads it, they will see it their way. If someone who is more like the Duke, more of a practical mind, he would agree with the Duke. He would say, "Ah, yeah, she was just a stupid Instagram cow. She had it coming for her." Because he's a serious man and she was just... Yeah, so it depends on who reads it and how. Then again, as you read it, does it sound like a poem? Does it sound like a poem when you read it? No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It does sound like someone talking, speaking. But we have rhymes quite clear and in couplets, which is like an easy kind of rhyme. But as you read it, they come in different parts of the phrases, in the beginning, in the middle, in the end. So unless we stress it, we might not even notice some of that. Because the natural stress comes to different words in the phrases. Yeah, like, none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. Unless you look at the page, unless you stress out by, then you may not notice the rhyme. What else can we say here?
I don't know. Something escapes me, but I can't put it into words. So just...
Well, something else we have here is stranger. Strangers like you never read this pictured face, but ask me. So again, one is he lets a stranger into his private apartment, let's say. Two, we are strangers. We enter the poem, we are strangers to the Duke, and the Duke is a stranger to us, but he shares his story with us. But he says, you, the reader, because he says read. He talks about a painting, but he uses the word read. And maybe in a way he says when someone reads a poem, a story, they don't stop to think for themselves, but they ask for an explanation and then they just accept it. And if that's what you do, if you say, I don't know, what does it mean, could you tell me, Mr. Teacher? Okay, I'll tell you. But you know, it will be my idea of it, not yours. Yeah? So maybe, that is also, again, how we generally read the reality. Ask for an explanation, for someone else to explain it. Explain, make it plain, flat, rather than thinking for ourselves. Or maybe, since that's what the Duke says, and that's only what the Duke says from the first word to the last word, maybe that stranger, that person, has his own ideas, but within this frame, he is not allowed to have it. So the Duke's point of view is forced on him. Then again, when he talks about a woman, does he say, oh, I love her so much and she was unfair?
No.
What does he say?
He lists her mistakes, things that displeased him. He gives hints as to how to interpret the painting and all the details of the painting. But he never mentions his sort of romantic feelings to this lady.
Yeah, what kind of words does he use? Does he say, I loved her and she did not love me? Is that what he says? What words does he use? He says, gift. My favor, my gift, anybody's gift. So again, what he expects is some kind of a rational deal.
Yeah, give and take, yeah.
He says, if I, basically I buy her, but she refuses to be bought. She's too stupid to understand that she is bought. And my favor at her breast. Not my kiss on her cheek, my favor at her breast. My gift of a 900 years old name. Oh, a fat gift that. To him it's really important. 900 years old name is not a trifle. It's big, it's important. Of course it's big and important. He's the Duke of Ferrara, not some bloody Evans. Not some bloody John Smith. He gives her the title, the pedigree, and she just doesn't care about it. Or she cares about it no more, no less than about cherries that some officials full broken water for her. She doesn't see the difference. Is she stupid? Is she an idiot? Imbecile? Yeah, so from his point of view, he gives her a lot and he doesn't give all due respect. And he can't bear that. So from his point of view, all he does is perfectly reasonable. Anything else here? Anything else? So any kind of summary?
Summary.
Yeah, if you have anything.
Just the book I was browsing through. Which says something to the effect that there are two kinds of happy people. Married women and bachelors. So this is probably somehow the thing that he would agree with, sort of, and yet one thing that you said is really a thing rather than a person, is an explanation of why this practical or rational or whatever person wants to get married again and again and again. And the only answer that seems plausible is that he does look at a woman in his life as a thing in his life which has to be beautiful and need other requirements that he might reasonably have of it. And what you do with the thing, if it doesn't really meet your requirements, is you
Either fix it
either
or
fix
throw it away.
or throw it away and replace it if you can afford it, if you can replace it with another thing which better suits its purpose.
Yeah, in other words, he marries because it's a right thing to do, because it's I don't know, fashionable, respectable. If you're a duke and you don't have a wife, then people will give you looks. Yeah, he's weird. So that is my last Duchess painted on the wall. Again, it's not a painting as such, it's painted on the wall, on the surface of the wall, which means first, it's really flat, it's a part of the wall. Second, it becomes a part of the house. She is inside the wall. Then what? That looks as she were alive. I call it peace around now. So yeah, again, he focuses on a thing. That peace is a wonder. He doesn't say, "Oh, that's my wife. I loved her so much." But he said, "Oh, that's a painting of my wife, and I like the painting so much."
Yeah, and like the sculpture cast in bronze, it's sort of made of stone. The painting, although it is a painting, is made of stone, so you can't really move it. You can probably remove it by having a movable paper over it, or you can remove it by destroying the wall, or you can sort of remove it by moving houses, and then somebody else would just decide what to do with it.
I guess what happens here, when you think about the house, it's the same as a 900 years old name, 900 years old house.
Yeah.
So it's really much bigger than that woman, and it devours her, literally now. She's literally a part of this house, and she's immobile. She's subdued completely to the house as the idea. And then again, there she stands. It's not her, it's a painting. That's she. She's transferred to the painting, and then that pictured countenance, that pictured face. You look at her face here, but you look at the painting, the painted face. And of course you say a painted face, something like a mask, something not alive. Yeah, and now he wants to marry the next girl and get some money with it. With the wedding.
Good idea. Good enough.
Okay, then we can finish, I guess. Do-do-do-do. Great. So it could be a good homework to try and write it from someone else's perspective. Maybe the woman, maybe that servant, or someone else.